Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. We're so glad you could attend. Come inside, come inside.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Expat Conversations with your host, Michael Nolen. I want to say thank you very much for tuning in today. I hope you find the conversation we're getting ready to have exciting, fun, educational, and everything else you'd expect. If you haven't ever seen one of the shows before, we are sponsored by the University of Guadalajara here in Mexico, central Mexico, the state of Jalisco. Dr. Marco Antonio Cortez Gradado is the former general rector of the university, or president, as us expats call it, like president of the University of San Diego or UCLA or Chicago or Johns Hopkins or whatever. Anyway, Dr. Cortez worked as general rector or president for 6 years, then moved over to Puerto Vallarta, kind of gave himself a campus on the Bay of Banderas, beautiful part of Mexico that many of you all have probably been to in Puerto Vallarta. And at that time, he asked me if I would host a weekly radio show in English through the University of Guadalajara radio station. So I said yes and started doing that, and spent about 4.5 years each week talking about different things on the radio for the expat community. After a couple of years, I moved over here to Lake Chapala area, which is on the east side of the city of Guadalajara. It's about 25 miles away. And we wanted to do something for the expat community over here, help educate them about all kinds of things. That's what universities do, is educate people. And then all of a sudden, pandemic hit and had to stop everything after the first week or two. But now we're back in full swing. And I want to say thank you very, very much to Dr. Cortez. He is, as I mentioned, the president now of the Institute of Investigation, Innovation, and Governance. And what they try and do is find out what the impact is of expats on the country of Mexico. And so I want to thank Dr. Cortez and the Institute for allowing us to have this program. Also want to thank the beautiful Monte Carlo Hotel and Resort here on the west side of the city of Chapala. It's a beautiful, beautiful facility right on the lake. We have a lot of hotel rooms, convention rooms, meeting rooms, a really, really great restaurant, pickleball courts, mineral spas, the thermal waters that are coming out of the earth here are very, very healthy for you. So we've got several of those locations on the different property. And so please, if you're coming down here for a visit, if you're an expat, not sure if you want to move to the Lake Chapala area, but have heard a lot about it, you need somewhere to stay, please look at the Monte Carlo Hotel and Resort as your host home while you're here for the week or two of the months, whatever. If you're a resident, an expat here already, you've got a whole bunch of family coming in for the holidays or visitors, and you don't want to have Uncle Charlie snoring all day and drinking all your refreshments and eating all your food, send your family over here to the Monte Carlo and let them stay here, and then just come visit you during the day or go to one of the great organizational places that you can have fun, run the great restaurants or whatever here in the area. Today I have a really unique individual that I actually met walking one day. I was over walking around my neighborhood, and here he was, and I could tell he was an expat. And so we got talking and found out we both kind of have life in Oklahoma. We grew up there, and he's been down here probably longer than I am, but his name is Dan Dover. And Dan, thank you for coming over.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm learning more and more about him all the time. As you can see, this instrument over here, it's a guitar, as we call them in Oklahoma, guitars.
Guitar, yeah.
And of course, Oklahoma is kind of, you have the Bible Belt in Oklahoma, and you also have the country and western belt. And Oklahoma is kind of the buckle. There's so many great performers that have come out of Oklahoma, to name a few. Reba McEntire, Garth Brooks, Carrie Underwood, Toby Keith, Tommy Nelson, let's see, Vince Gill, I'm sure I'm
Leon
forgetting a lot
Russell,
of
just for-
Leon Russell, Roy Clark, Dan Dover, and probably a lot of people I'm forgetting. If I forgot you, sorry. But he's a musician. I don't know a lot more about him than that. I'm going to learn a lot. I'm going to be quiet here in a minute, let him do the talking. But I know he has an organization down here, or a group, or whatever you want to call it, where a bunch of musicians get together once a week and try and help each other learn to play their instruments better. They learn to write songs. They have an open mic day. And so I'm going to be quiet. I know it's hard for me to do. But I am going to try and be quiet for a little bit and just let Dan kind of explain how he got down here, how long he's been here, what brought him to the area, what he did before he came down here to the lake area, and then about his musicianal work and the classes and the groups and everything else. So I'm going to be quiet and let you talk.
Oh, thanks.
The mic's yours.
Oh, thanks. So I see, just like most Okies, you're loquacious.
I don't know what that word means. I do want to tell you an Oklahoma joke. It's my favorite joke. I was at a funeral in Oklahoma about 6 months ago, and a guy said, "Michael, you know what they call pallbearers here in Oklahoma?"
No idea.
I said, "No, pallbearer." He goes, "No, they call them karaoke." That kind of ties into the music theme we're doing today.
Yeah.
You know, so that's it. I'll let you all have that one.
Okay, well, I'm Dan Dover. I actually am originally from Oklahoma. Spent the first 31 years of my life there.
What part of Oklahoma?
I was born outside of a little town called Purcell,
I know where it's at. I was born in Tuscaloosa.
30 miles or so south of Oklahoma City, and I grew up in Oklahoma City. I think I was 9 months old when my family moved there. And I stayed there for 30-something years. I went to Southeast High School, and actually went to several colleges in Oklahoma at one time or another, as you know, hippies tended to do in those days. It's not finish anything.
Yeah.
But
well.
I ended up in Oregon, Portland, Oregon, where I was a nurse. I got my nursing degree in Oklahoma. And,
My mother was an RN,
Yeah.
Army nurse. She was a nurse in Baltimore. And then the day after Pearl Harbor, they drafted her. They didn't draft her, but they asked her, "Would you join the Army, be a nurse, and go to the Fiji Islands?"
Yeah. Oh.
And that's where she met my dad. My dad was a pharmacist from Oklahoma, from Broken Arrow. And they ended up at the 142nd General Hospital, ended up in the Fiji Islands trying to take care of a lot of the wounded from Pearl Harbor, because the United States didn't want to bring them to California because they thought the Japanese was going to take over California and the rest of the West Coast. So they sent them south, where the British government had a very strong naval presence. So, but anyway, she was an RN. My dad was a pharmacist, and so we got that in common
Yeah,
too.
for sure.
We might be brothers.
Yeah, you never know. I'm not going to go there. I supposedly have a brother I've never met. On my dad's deathbed, he revealed that he had a child in Arizona when he had gone off on the bone for a while. And supposedly his name is Elbert Dover. So if you're out there, Elbert Dover, let me know.
My daughter lives in Phoenix. I'll have her jump right on looking for him. Albert Dover.
Elbert with an E.
Albert.
Yeah, that's my dad's name too.
Okay. Well,
But I haven't been able to find him, so he may not even exist. But,
yeah, so one of your dads. My dad was a salesman. He sold pharmaceutical drugs after the Army, and he was kind of like that movie Big Fish.
Oh yeah.
If you ever
great
saw
movie,
it,
great
he would
movie.
come home. He was a traveling sales guy. He had 4 states, and he'd come home and tell us the most outrageous stories. And then later on in life, we found out a lot of them were true. You know, he'd met a lot of really famous people and this, that, and the other, and we just thought he was entertaining us 6 kids.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
when I watch that movie, I cry every time because it reminds me of my dad so
It's
much.
a great movie.
Big Fish.
Yeah. So,
I'm sorry I interrupted you
No,
again.
that's
Go
okay.
on,
It's,
Dan.
it's your show. So I went to Oregon. I started playing guitar while I was still in Oklahoma. A friend of mine came to my house one day and taught me the chords to "Knocking on Heaven's Door." I wrote a song the next day
Really?
using those chords, and I still play that once in a while. It's been several years now since I played it, but I've written hundreds of songs now. My songs aren't known by anybody except me and the people that come to my shows and people that were part of my. In Portland, I was kind of what Folk Alley calls a folk spoke. I was a person who enabled a lot of music and a lot of entertainment. my wife and I hosted a house concert series for 10 years, at which some of the luminaries in the singer-songwriter, Americana, folk singer world played. We had some 80 house concerts during that time, and we also started our songwriter circle. Everything we do we call Doverlaff, Doverlaff, which is a portmanteau of mine and my wife's last names. Her name is Mitzlaff, so kind of works out. And so we had that for a long time. We continued to do that. So I got to the point where I was, past my retirement age, and we had traveled all over the world. So we had a pretty good nest egg, but not enough that we figured we could still live in Portland and live the lifestyle that we like.
The West Coast is a very expensive place to live.
It is. Portland's not as expensive as Los Angeles and stuff like that, but it's
San Francisco, then you're going up to Vancouver. And
Yep. So we decided we had to, because we traveled around the world, we looked at various places. We went to Vietnam and just loved it. We were there for 6 weeks, Loved it. People were so nice to us. Of course, most people there that live there now are, the vast majority are people that were born after the war.
Sure.
So it was good. It was
It's
good.
like going to Germany now as an American, or Japan.
Right. Yeah.
Most of the people don't even remember.
People were so nice to us, and the cost of living is like nothing.
Yes.
It's like free. So we thought about going there, but that's a long way.
That's a long
It's
way to get back
20-hour
when you
flight,
wanna-
and no one's going to really come to visit us.
Have a chicken fried steak or some pumpkin pie.
Yeah, right. No pumpkin pie. We were in India a few years ago on Thanksgiving. And it just so happened on the day of the Thanksgiving, the tour was doing what they call a home visit. So we went to somebody's home, all 12 of us on the tour, and they made dinner for us. And it was Thanksgiving, so they couldn't get a turkey, but they got a couple little chickens and fixed them up like turkeys and cooked them and tried to make a pumpkin pie. You don't want to hear about that. But it was a very interesting experience. So, but we've been
So
all
you've
these
traveled
places.
around the world.
Yeah. And we had friends that had already moved here. And I'd been reading about Chapala in International Living magazine, because it has all the places that expats might want to live. So when they moved here, we decided to come visit them. We were just happenstance. We were here the night of the election in 2016. And we were going to look at houses for fun. Well, we called the real estate agent the next day, and we started looking for houses for real. It took us a few months to find the one we have, but we just loved it. And so we bought that in 2017, and then moved down here in 2019. And we've been here
And you moved from Oregon
to here,
straight down here?
Yeah.
So you never went back to Oklahoma after?
I go to Oklahoma.
I mean, you
now.
go there for visit, but
Yeah.
you never moved or lived as an adult?
Once I tried to escape Oklahoma several times, and I always ended up bouncing back. But finally, I got escape velocity, and I was able to stay in the outer orbit, I think.
Well, every time I go back to Oklahoma, I love it. I got a lot of family there, and the only thing is, every time I get off the airplane, I have to turn my watch back 25 years.
25 years.
Oh, it's not that bad, but sometimes.
Yeah.
You think it is.
Some of my very best friends in the world are there, so it's good people. Good
Yeah,
people.
they are.
But it's,
Can't beat it. It's like Will Rogers said, he never met a man he didn't like. And I forgot to say, Woody Guthrie,
Oh.
Arlo's father, grew up there in
Right,
Oklahoma.
yes.
Matter of fact, I was at a movie festival in Cork, Ireland a couple of years ago, and through the university, and there was a movie made by Jim Sheridan. He's a very, very famous
Yeah.
Irish movie producer and director. And it starred Selma Hayek, and it was called 11 Hours.
I don't know that one.
The movie was only 11 minutes long.
Ooh.
And it was about an event that happened 11 hours after 9/11 in New York City at a bar that was frequented by New York City police and firemen.
First responders, yeah.
And this fireman walks in that's just, it looks like he's been through hell, which he had, because he had been on the site of the towers since about 10 o'clock after they came down. 10 minutes after they came down, and had been there, and he was totally stunned. And he walks in this bar. But anyway, the long story, it's a great movie. It's called 11 Hours.
I'll look it up.
And it's done by Jim Sheridan with Selma Hayek. But at the very end of the movie, they have a song sung by Bruce Springsteen. This Land Is Your
Yes,
Land,
right.
This Land
Yeah.
Is My Land by
Woody
Woody
Guthrie.
Guthrie.
Yeah.
And someone in the audience asked Jim Sheridan, said, how did you get Bruce Springsteen to sing that song? And he said, well, I don't know Bruce Springsteen, but I had my friend Bono of YouTube, I mean not YouTube, U2, who lives in Ireland, called Bruce because they're buddies and asked me if he'd sing, and Bruce said, sure.
Yeah.
That's kind of the connections we need to have.
Yeah.
But anyway, to hear that song at the end of it, and after watching the movie, which is only 11 minutes long, but it's very powerful, very, very powerful. If you ever have an opportunity to see it, Google it on YouTube, or whatever. It's called The 11th Hour by Jim Sheridan with Selma Hayek and some other stars. But anyway,
Yeah,
it was
kind of
neat to
music-
hear that song.
The kind of music I play has a big debt to Woody Guthrie. He's the kind of person-
Folklore type music.
folklore, singer-songwriter, you know, to some degree topical music. My music isn't that topical, some of it is, but it's that thing, acoustic music played where the singer is the most important thing, and you don't need a whole lot of other, you know, you don't need an orchestra, or you don't even need
The
a big
words are
band.
important.
The words are important.
It's
The
like
words
the
aren't just
songs-
space fillers.
I was watching a special the other day about a concert in 1970 of Creedence Clearwater Revival when they were playing at the Royal Albert Hall, and it was like the concert was like 3 days after Paul McCartney decided to leave the Beatles, and the Beatles were, of course, from the mid 60s to they broke up, the #1 band in the world. But Clearwater Revival was right there next to them, and they actually, after that concert at Royal Albert Hall, they'd been on a tour of Europe for a while, became the #1 band in the world. But a lot of their music is stuff about swamps and dirty water and this stuff, the other. It's around the Gulf Coast and stuff. And they were never even there. They never even went there to write the songs or the music. It was just their imagination, what they'd heard and what they'd read. And the two brothers and the other guys in Creedence Clearwater Revival were just, it was an amazing documentary. It's on Netflix right now. If you have an hour, watch it. It's very educational and good. But that same thing. They wrote songs not meaning to have them one side or the other political, but they became like anthems for a lot of different things during the Vietnam time and this, that, and the other.
You know, folk music is well known for story songs. You know, songs about
Bob
you know,
Dylan,
yeah.
of course.
I have some songs that are story songs. Most of my songs are more like pictures, where it's just this and this and this and that add up to a picture of a place. I brought a song with me today, an Oklahoma song, Oklahoma City, July 21st, 1969. I always say that if you
I was
don't know-
down at Memorial Park
You know, the hit.
between Northwest 36
I
and
know.
Northwest 34th, Class and Western.
Yeah.
That was where it was like a valley.
People's Park.
It was,
People called it at
but
the
you
time.
saw a fog coming off of that valley,
It wasn't fog.
and it was a sweet smelling fog. And once you got into it, you just wasn't sure when or where you left.
Yeah, that
or
part
how
was
you
very
got-
important to me. in my
Memorial
life.
Park was a fast time, and I only lived 2 blocks away from it,
Wow.
and I've been going there since I was a little kid. Well, you said you brought a song.
Mm-hmm.
You have your guitar. Can I entice you to maybe strum a little bit, sing a song or two for us?
Absolutely, absolutely.
There we
I
go.
picked this one because you're an Okie, and whenever I ask my wife about a song to play, that's the first thing that comes to that she wants to say. She wants to hear this song.
Is she an Okie also?
No, she's
Oh,
from
I'm
Washington. She's from Washington State. So I don't know if you know what that date is. What happened that day? If not, you'll remember.
July, what was it?
21st, 1969.
July 21st, 1969. You know, I went to Harvard University a couple of years ago, and people have asked me, where'd you go to school? I went to Harvard. I didn't go there for education. I went there for a vacation. I was up in Boston. I went there.
Boston.
And I went to Harvard, so I can tell people now I did go to Harvard. And they had a really neat museum exposition of nothing but the year 1969. And it was very powerful.
Great year.
Of course, it had the Black Power movement, it had Woodstock, it had the Detroit or the Chicago riots, it had on and on and on. I never, you know, I was born in 54, so 64. I was 14 years old or something like that. And I was in a, you know, high school party mood, having a great time working at Pizza Hut for $1 an hour.
Yep.
I still had my pay stubs. 32nd Classen. And so, you know, I remember, and that was a great time to grow up. I had 4 brothers and a sister, and we had a lot of fun down there and hundreds of friends. And it was just 69, 70, it was just a great, great time. Great muscle cars.
Yes,
I couldn't
indeed.
afford any of them.
Yes.
But everybody was mellowed out. Everybody's having a good time. And, you know, even Oklahoma City, like I said, was the buckle of the Bible Belt. But it was still a pretty cool place to grow up.
It was cool.
And I remember Woodstock was late August, '69,
Yes.
and I actually know a kid that went there.
Yep.
So-
This is not Woodstock, but it's the second most important thing that happened that year.
I'm gonna learn.
Lightning bugs flashing in an Oklahoma sky. Heat lightning on the horizon, warning storms are coming by. Tony asks me questions, Becky hums some Beatles tune. Shooting stars go streaking, and men walk upon the moon. Men walk upon the moon.
Neil Armstrong.
Oh, there's a line. Oh, yeah. Tony's mother calls him home. Supper's getting cold. Randy rolls by in his Ford. The moon has turned to gold. Somewhere TV echoes the calling of a loon. Stray dogs bark in the dark. Men walk upon the moon. Men walk upon the moon. That's me in summer '69, hanging with my friends, not knowing who'll get left behind or that the story ends. Dylan on the radio, Randy leaving soon. War and music, sex and drugs, men walking on the moon, men walking on the moon. But that's been more than 40 years, those summer days are gone. Randy never made it back, got lost in Vietnam. And me, I've roamed 10,000 miles just looking for the tune to sing about that summer day. Men walked upon the moon, men walked upon the moon. Little shortened version.
I'm surprised I didn't hear Ronnie K. or Danny Williams play that on WKY.
Danny,
Danny Williams.
I share a lot with Danny Williams. I don't know if you remember. You may be too young, but before Foreman Scotty, you remember Foreman Scotty?
I remember Foreman Scotty
Before
and
Foreman
Mr.
Scotty,
Green
there was
Woody, riding Woody, the cowboy, the birthday horse.
3D Danny was
Yeah,
before
3D
it.
Danny.
And in fact,
He was a space guy.
Foreman Scotty was his friend, and he had a robot named Bazark, and so my name is Danny D. Dover. So, and when I was a kid, I was
3D
always
Danny.
3D Danny.
You know Ho Ho the Clown?
Yeah.
He lived 2 blocks from me. It's great to be able to sit down here in Lakeside, Mexico. It never gets below 60. It never gets above 90. We have very little humidity, even though we have the largest lake in all of Mexico here.
Makes its
because
own
we're
weather.
at 5,400 feet or 5,300 feet altitude. Beautiful weather, eternal spring. I talked to my daughter in Phoenix or Scottsdale and went to 120. I talked to my brother in Oklahoma, or my daughter, that's, you know, starting to turn cold
Yeah.
up there now, and we'll get down to the 20s and, you know, and
Below
stuff. They'll
zero.
have that white stuff
Yeah,
coming down, and you can't drive your car, you know, it's like you've really been partying good. And down here, you don't ever have that.
No.
The worst thing about it's the cobblestone streets.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful place down here. It's inexpensive. It's just paradise.
Yeah, it is. We
Not
don't-
by the
we
dashboard
don't
lights,
have,
but
we don't have any heating or cooling system.
neither
We do
do
have,
I.
when we rebuilt our house, because we found out it was falling off the foundation after we bought it. Spent 9 months living in other people's casitas while it was rebuilt, and it was an ugly little fireplace, and we redid that. And there's a local artist named Federico Ramos, who's a fantastic mosaic artist who redid our fireplace for us. Just absolutely gorgeous. So it's for show only, really. We have a couple of little electric heaters that on some of those February nights when it might get down into the 50s, we might get one of those out. warm us up just a little bit.
I just snuggled up closer to my wife.
There you go.
You know, get that little body heat going. I learned that when I was young, and it still works.
Still works.
That's one thing's never broken. Huddling up to your loved one, you're supposed to.
That's how we're designed.
That's a neat song. I was at my grandmother's house in Sapulpa.
Sapulpa, yeah.
And I remember watching that TV. I remember also I was there, if I'm not, I know I was there when Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated in the California hotel room.
Yeah.
And, you know, all those were very, very tragic moments. They still stick with you. I don't know what I had for lunch yesterday.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I did Saturday. I know last Friday I went to Costco, which took me 3 hours to get back because of all the traffic. But I do remember the 60s, well, the later
Kinda.
60s, and some of the 70s. You know, those things
Well,
I
say if
don't
you-
remember, but those are probably the really, really bad things I might psychologically
Right.
kind of threw out. But that was a great time. I was talking to a guy yesterday, Clayton Ray from Oklahoma City, went to high school with me, and we were talking about growing up, going to high school. I went to Bishop McGinnis Catholic school, and it's just completely different. I've had nieces and nephews go there, and now their kids are getting ready to go. I'm getting ready to go to my 50th high school reunion next year.
I went to mine a couple of years ago.
50 years, where the hell did that go? You know, but I love growing up. It was a great time. We're talking about how great of a time it was to grow up there. Everything was innocence,
Yeah.
more or less. And what we thought we were really pushing the limit on getting in trouble is nothing compared to
Right,
today.
right. Yes, indeed.
You know,
Indeed.
and things would happen on the south side, or Norman, or Moore, or Guthrie, or El Reno, and you'd find out about 4 or 5 days later. Now, anything happens in Russia, or China, or El Salvador, or wherever, and you know about it seconds later.
Right.
I don't think I like that as much, you know. But so that's a meaningful song, writing about men. Now, when did you write that? Did you write it right after that happened, or was it years later?
No, I wrote it many years later. I probably wrote that song 15 years ago.
And you said you've written over 100
Oh,
songs.
I've written tons of songs.
Have you submitted any of them to Nashville or any of those strangers?
No, you know, that's one of the things. If you don't play the lottery, you don't win. I just keep my stuff to myself. I keep trying to get together an album. I made 2 or 3 little homemade albums, you know, and I sell them or give them away in my performances. But I've never really gone the full studio route and done that thing because I got other things, you know. My wife, she really likes to travel. I could spend, like my good friend Dan Weber, being a
Weber
Woody
root
Guthrie.
beer?
No,
Darn.
more like
That's
Weber
best
the
damn
Grill.
root beer.
But he wrote a song about Woody Guthrie called "Oh Woody." If you want to hear a great song, look up "Oh Woody" on YouTube. Look up Dan Weber. You'll have a bunch of good songs. He and I drug each other out of our basements where we were both just playing to the walls and made each other go out and start playing about 15, 16, 17 years ago. And now he's gone off to have
Did you
his
play any
career.
of the stuff, any of the clubs in Oklahoma City back
No,
in the
well,
day? This was
no.
all you learned to become
My-
a musician and everything after the fact, after you left Oklahoma?
My great desire in that regard would have been to be able to play at the Sword and Stone. Do you remember the Sword and Stone? It's
No, I can't say I do.
So it was on Northwest. It was
There was a
just
place on
one class
Blackwell or McKinley and about 28th or 9th, just north of Oklahoma City University, that was a
That was the
beatnik
black
brick,
the black
or the black
light.
stone, or black
The
light.
black light.
It had 3 round windows with lights in it, and it was like a beatnik type hangout.
Right, used to go there.
And I'm 68.
I'm 72.
Okay, so you're my sister's age. Did you ever meet my sister Barbara over there by chance?
Could be.
And that old brother Curtis. I was right in the middle of the kids. I was
Yeah.
the troublemaker. But you know, even Garth kind of played Christian music for a while, and then he went out to Nashville. Was there 3 or 4 days. Didn't do very well, and came back to Oklahoma 6 months later. You know, he kind of started this, that, and the other, and went back and tried to be an athlete at OSU. He was. He was actually a track star.
Yeah. Well, he's quite
through
the
the
chameleon
javelin
anyway.
and baseball and this, that, and the other. And Reba McEntire. Reba has a sister that, Reba got her start at singing the national anthem at the International Cowboy Hall of Fame representation of the Oklahoma City Rodeo. And she sang the national anthem there and then kind of got started. She has an older sister, Patty, that is probably, to me, a better singer and more talent, but she's only Christian music. And I've heard her sing at 3 or 4 of the Baptist churches in Oklahoma. Fabulous job. But, you know, the McIntyre family's down there by McAllister, that area between McAllister and A, and they have the Melody Ranch, big ranch that her granddad had. And a lot of famous songwriters, country and western people came out of Oklahoma.
Yes, indeed.
It's just a really kind of well, there ain't much else to do there.
Really? You know.
Go to Spring Lake or Wedgewood and ride on the amusement park, or go down to Memorial Park and hang out and really have a good time. You must have been down there in the really cool years.
I was.
I thought I was, but I was a little too young. I remember these guys gave us this little pink thing that looked like, I thought it was a baby aspirin.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
And I took that, and about me and my good friend Danny, we call him Crazy Blue, we did that, and we weren't really sure where we were for a couple of days. And it was sure an experience. And then somebody said, hey, do you want to smoke this wacky tobacco?
Wacky tobacco.
And I said, sure. And I hated smoking. $10 for a mayonnaise jar lid. And that did nothing to you. But after taking the little pink baby aspirin, now that our president of the United States has legalized all that stuff, and you can buy it anywhere and stuff, and you can't get in trouble, they're letting all the people out of jail that have ever had simple possession laws, which I think is a great deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are people I know that went to jail for a long time. For
right now, they're only doing
federal
people that have had federal possession charges.
Yeah.
And then, but he's encouraging all the governors to.
Yeah, well, there's like 19 states now that it's legal. I think Oklahoma's actually
one way or another.
Something like that, but it's still a federal law you can't do.
Yeah.
Well, how did we get from here to there? I don't know, but it was fun.
Oklahoma has the most open medical marijuana program. I mean, when in Portland, when it was medical marijuana, you couldn't just go out anywhere and get it. There weren't big dispensaries. But in Oklahoma, there are big signs and.
No, Venice Beach. Well, I was in California. While back in Venice Beach, they got, pay $5 and get a prescription right there by the guy in the weird green outfit. That's
And now you don't even need the
Dr.
prescriptions.
Reed or whatever he goes by. Well, you mentioned that song about Man in the Moon. It was very interesting. I liked it. I'd like to hear more. Do you have another song you can maybe throw out for us, for our audience?
Absolutely.
And then I wanted to tell everybody, you all have a songwriters group that gets together once a week?
Well, I have once a month. We have on my terraza the Dover Lab Singer-Songwriter Circle. So most of those people write songs to some extent. Some just sing. But every week at Casa Dominic on the Lake Chapala Society campus, we have an open mic Saturday from 12 to 2:30. Okay. And it just gets bigger and bigger all the time.
Mr. Balfour's been on my show several times. Oh, cool. And the new director, I can't remember his name, he was on a couple weeks ago. And so the Lake Chapala Society is just kind of like the hub of what's happening in this area.
Oh,
so
it is.
if you're
Especially in the expat world.
And you want to know anything about how to bank, how to do this, how to get this, your driver's license and all that, Lake Chapala Society will help you a lot. So if you have another one that's kind of Oklahoma kind of oriented, that'd be great. If not, there's that place down south. What's the name of it? It's between Mexico and Oklahoma. I can't remember the name of that state. But anyway, there's a lot of great music come out of there. I've got a cousin that lives in Austin. And that's a town you can have a lot of fun in.
Indeed.
If you want to. But no more than like Cushing or Owasso. My dad used to always say, Sally saw Henrietta wagging her Catoosa. Now those are all 4 town names in Oklahoma. Sally saw Henrietta wagging her in Catoosa. Okay. But my dad thought that was funny.
Yeah. My grandfather had that sense of humor. He would introduce himself as Harry Henry Hiram Homer Hollingsworth Walter Mulligan Hill. His name was Harry Henry Hill. This is another
song by Dan Duncan.
This is not about
Dan
Oklahoma.
Dover, I'm sorry. Where did I get Dan Duncan?
I used to go to this songwriting camp, and there was a lake, and every time I walked around that lake, I would get a song. Turn this one. This is one of those. It's kind of short. hate it when the first word won't come to you.
Well, your guitar playing is fabulous, so we just hear a solo of that.
A crying comet streaks across the unseen universe, makes ellipses round the chosen star. Light that leaves that galaxy makes a great traverse, 10 million years to get to where you are. Sometimes you gotta get away, sometimes there's not a word to say, sometimes the little games we play leave us wondering what it's for. Sometimes with merely half a heart, you try to play the bigger part. Sometimes you barely feel the dark that leaves us on the floor, leaves us needing more as love walks out the door. The surface of the water gleams a green and blissful calm, walking round the circuit of its girth. The trail, the trees, the barely breeze applies a greater balm. Communion here, water, sky, and earth. My heels kick up those little clouds of dust there in my wake, walking steady up the steepest climb. Unseen birds flit and caw and dance around the lake, all together heal a hurting mind. Sometimes you gotta get away, sometimes there's not a word to say, sometimes the little games we play leave us wondering what it's for. Sometimes with merely half a heart, you try to play the bigger part. Sometimes you barely feel the dark that leaves us on the floor, leaves us needing more as love walks out the door. A line of cars goes light to light on the way to work, back again to win the daily bread. Voices on the radio remind us what it's worth, recount disasters, names of all the dead. Sometimes there's not another way, sometimes there's not a word to say, sometimes the little games we play leave us wondering what it's for. Sometimes with merely half a heart, you try to play the bigger part. Sometimes we barely feel the dart that leaves us on the floor, leaves us needing more as love walks out the open door. A crying comet streaks across the unseen universe.
Hey, what I want you to do is help me rewrite the song Oklahoma by Roger Hammerstein, because it's outdated.
Yeah.
You know, it's Oklahoma where the wind comes sweeping down the plain,
And the waving weed, it sure smells sweet as the wind comes right behind the rain.
We're gonna rewrite that. You know what the first four words are to that song? Brand new state, gonna make it great.
I did not know that.
If you ever listen to
I've
the
seen
real
it.
song of Oklahoma by Roger Hammerstein, everybody starts off, oh, Oklahoma, where the wind comes sweeping down the plain. It's really brand new state, gonna make it great.
That's from the movie, or from
It's
the
from
play,
the play,
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Well, I hope I didn't break the sound system here singing. I'm not quite as talented as this guy is, but I want to say thank you very much. We're out of time today.
Okay.
But please, if you're down here in the Lakeside area, you play an instrument, you want to get together and learning how to write songs better, or if you want to go to open mic, and is that named after me?
Yes, all
Anyway, if
of
you
my
want to have some
nephew.
fun, have a good time, check out Mr. Dover on the internet. And give out your webpage again or whatever.
You look up the word Doverlaff, Doverlaff. Anything with that name is mine and my
Okay.
wife's. And so on Facebook, Doverlaff, singer-songwriter Circle Chapala. Also always the events of the all performers, open mic, open stage at Lake Chapala Society. And that's not just for singers and songwriters. That's for actors and poets and dancers and anything you want to do. We have once in a while-
Comedians?
Comedians, yes.
Can I come tell some jokes?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's hard to find comedians who will come out and do that.
It is?
We would.
I'm not embarrassed.
We'd love to have you. We need
I
some.
already gave the
guests.
Oklahoma joke away.
Anyway,
Appreciate your time.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate you taking the time to sing. And if you're a big-time producer or director in that little town that's north of Nolensville, Tennessee, it's called Nashville, hook up with Dan. He'll write you a song or two, and we can all get rich.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Well, it's the end of another episode of Expat Conversations. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Happy trail.